Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Napkin Numbers. Today, we've got our guest, Steve Kohnke, with Denver Business Coach. They've been around since 2012, and he brings a couple decades of business experience to business owners and helping them achieve their goals. He's going to be talking about some key business risks that all owners should be aware of when it comes to value growth. So, with that, Steve, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about yourself and kick this off.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Scott. Thanks for having me on. Very excited to jump into this topic. I had a couple businesses, house painting business, the most longest standing one that I had, a summer job through college, pretty much. Talk about it as being my beer money source, right? Didn't end up selling it, but it was a fun, great learning experience. Spent some time in change consulting for Fortune 500 companies, and then was able to work with Denver Business Coach, start Denver Business Coach with my partner, Simon Zarid. And we've been helping business owners since 2012 develop valuable businesses that are sellable, that are owner independent. And we'll talk about some of the risks where business owners grow their business not understanding, and then they realize that their business is invaluable, and the things that we can do and what they can do to prevent some of these things from happening that actually devalue their business, increase the risk.
Oh, perfect. Well, let's start off with that. Tell us a little bit more about these risks that you run into.
Yeah, so some of the bigger risks that we see is dependency. If you want to kind of chalk it up to a word, that can be dependency on the owner themselves, dependency on any key employee, dependency on any customer, any supplier. So I'll kind of start with a customer client area. This can be the benchmark that we use is 15%. If a customer is uh, accounts for more than 15% of the overall revenue of the company, it's a highly risky business. So we look to diversify where revenue is coming from, services that are provided, things like that. Uh, One of the questions we do ask owners for the owner dependency question that always gets some eyebrows being raised, I guess, is, you know, how often do your customers come to you for questions, or if problems arise, or how many of them do you know by name, want to deal with you personally? A lot of business owners say, yeah, they want to deal with me. They know me, and they're a lot of times they're proud of that fact, right? But that's a clear indicator for us, at least, that the business is pretty heavily reliant on the business owner themselves. So that's probably one of the bigger things that we work on with our clients, is helping to really separate the owner and the business into two different things, and having the business owner look at their business as an asset, something that they can work on and grow without their day-to-day involvement.
I got a question for you. Would you say that in your experience, you find that with these businesses where the owners have a lot of involvement in it, do you see them have a lot of emotion tied to the business also, and then equate that into value for the business?
Absolutely. Yeah. The stats out there are 3 out of 4 business owners are dissatisfied with selling their business a year later. Most of them regret it. And I attribute that to a lot of business owners really have their identity around being a business owner. And as soon as they sell their business, their identity goes away. One of the questions we look out for is how a business owner describes themselves, and referring to themselves as "I am a business owner" or "I own a business." What would you think is the answer we look for
Yeah, no, that's a great way of putting it. I like that question.
when
What
they can?
about the one we hear this a lot? Well, my brand should be worth X, right? How do you
Right.
break down brand and value?
Brand is a harder one, I think. I think the loyalty comes into play in the smaller businesses that we work in. It doesn't come into be a major factor of it. And if anything, the owner is emotionally tied to that brand. If it's a strategic acquisition, the brand may not have any value. And so the business owner really has to understand how they want to sell their business. And that's some of the questions that we ask them is, what is important to you in that sale? Because if brand is super important to them, uh, that strategic acquisition or private equity route may not be something that they really want. But brand can play a factor into the value if it has a known presence within the marketplace is when it really starts having an effect. And again, a lot of the businesses that have such a small market share, it can be tough to put true value on the brand itself, from what I've seen at least.
So one of the things that we do for brand too is when you have a smaller company, to your point, it's uh, I am attached to it. I've been doing this for 50 years, and my heart and soul is here, and everybody knows me, and that's my brand and building it
Yeah.
up. And where we see the major effect of branding tends to be from a financial consideration when companies get really large. When you start talking about Toyota versus Lexus, well, why do you make that buying decision? When you get smaller, brand that influences buying decision is represented in your revenue. So
Right.
if I'm going to make a purchase and you've got $1 million a year company, then the dollar says that I bought your goods because I felt like you were the end result, what I wanted. And that's where your brand is in your revenue. Just as an aside, that's usually what we bring up
Yeah.
because branding is so difficult. And we try to put that distance at, if you're a Fortune 500 company, why do you just buy Coke billboards?
Yeah.
Because on the side of the road, you're like, oh, subconsciously Coke.
Oh,
But
yeah.
Joe's Landscaping isn't putting little signs everywhere so you remember Joe. They're just like, can I help you? And you're the neighbor down the street or something like that.
The brand, that's a good point. The brand where I could see it playing a factor into the value in smaller businesses is clients doing business with the business itself,
Mhm.
aka the brand, rather than doing business with the owner of the business. So that's kind of where that separation in value might have kind of maybe even a roundabout way of really affecting the value. But I think that ultimately comes down to the reliance of the business owner. But you can kind of piece that apart and saying, is a client doing business with the brand or the business itself? Or are they doing business with the business owner because the business owner owns the brand? And that's kind of a separation.
And I really like that all stems from your initial questioning of am I the business owner or do I own a business?
Right.
What a great question.
Definitely. So here's another one that comes up quite a bit. I would get your take on this. A lot of business owners will hear, hey, the value of your business is your bottom line, your net profits, your EBITDA margin, whatever it is, times 3.
Yeah.
Right? What do you have to say about that?
Probably not the most accurate. But there are stats out there, there's databases that we look into and really say what are the industry multiples for the size of your company, where's the bell curve, if you will, of performance here. So we can get some pretty granular multiples going on based on some of the intangibles that we look at, the dependency, the higher the risk, the lower that multiple is going to be, right? Um, so we can actually go into some of those databases and benchmark for our clients, where I see it most. If you're not actually using some of those databases, our clients will be like, oh, I Google it, and most marketing companies are trading at a 4x multiple, so I'm going to use that as my standard for value. Where it's actually a lot more intricate of a process, and you want to get the real data going in, factor in the intangibles. The misinformation I think that some business owners can come across in valuing their own company. One, I'm sure you guys see this. They put a much larger value on their company than maybe what the market's going to pay, for one. And so they're automatically going to assign best in class multiple to their business because they think that their company is going to the best out of all the ones that have been sold in their industry. So, um, just assigning a random multiple and saying, hey, I think my business is going to be this because I read an article that some businesses in my industry are trading at this. I think, yeah, it might be a good starting place, but that's a good time for us to really come into the conversation, or you guys to come into the conversation and say, what's the industry really doing? How is this really factoring in? What are the other pieces going into it? Because ultimately, um, if you look at some of the bigger companies, the balance sheets there, the value and of the shares comes about 80% from the intangibles of the business. That's, the systems, the processes, the people, the culture, brand is factored into some of that too. 20% is the actual P&L statement, the performance of it. So it's not as simple as just looking at, hey, here's my profit, here's my revenue, times it by 4. Okay, that's my value.
So you're saying the result of the work, doing the due diligence, will give you a number that then is, equals a certain multiple. It's not the other way around. Hey, I'm just going to take the bottom line and times it by a multiple, and hey, that's the approach I should take.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for the rudimentary way, sure. I mean, it's a good way to get the conversation started. Hey, Scott, I think my business is worth 4x EBITDA. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. No.
Yeah, no. No.
Let's do the work first and figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe I'll
Yeah.
come up with a multiple in the end.
Yeah. No, that's definitely, that's how we look at it, is that starting point, right? It's a great way to start a conversation of, I have this business, I don't know what it's worth, so I picked a number or I heard a number, and then where do we go from here to help validate, is that the right number or range of numbers? So no, I like that. So what do you think is another concern when it comes to value growth for the clients that you work with?
Concern for value growth. I mean, what we're looking at is overall risk of the business, and we have lots of different ways to poke holes and look at a business and how it's going to be measured. And some of the risks that a business will come into is competing on price or customer service. I don't know if you talk about businesses and they're looking at their differentiators. We come across it a lot of, what makes you different, and it's, we're going to be the best price at the best value, or our customer service is the best. Anytime I hear the customer service thing, I'm sure you guys hear it, but I'm like, pick something else, man. Like, everyone wants to compete on customer service. It's not a real differentiator. I was actually having this conversation with someone who owns a landscaping business the other day, and say, what do I have to sell? How can I actually increase the value of this? It's me and a couple crews that go out and, mow lawns, cut bushes. We're just like the next guy. We're just trying to compete and get the business. And like, turn it into a training program. I forget what this modeled after. I think maybe Chick-fil-A, but they have like a business development, turning yourself into like an entrepreneur, understanding how to run a business. So it's not just this one business owner and crews that go out and do the landscaping work, but he's able to bring on a team and teach them how to run the landscaping business is just the vehicle to actually training someone how to think like an entrepreneur. And that is something that you can market. That is something that you can actually separate yourself from the rest of the industry to make yourself really, truly differentiated. And people will choose you because you do something like that. Even if you are more pricey, they'll say, hey, this company's actually doing good in the world instead of just cutting bushes, mowing lawns. They're training kids how to think like entrepreneurs and become business owners. So like that differentiation component, a lot of business owners, a lot of companies don't think outside the box enough. They look at their competitors and say, oh, that's what their price is, so I'm going to make my price this, or something along that way. So I mean, that is a trap that business owners can get put into, is racing to the bottom in a lot of cases.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. So you put a team together of people that treat the business as if it's their own. right? Which then they are going to deliver a level of service that's probably better, right? Because they are so bought in, which then, yeah, if you have that team that thinks that way, your culture is a certain way, that is going to increase the value of the business.
Comes back to the intangible of culture, right? And it's a major factor. And when you are looking at selling a business, we look at growing businesses from the lens of a financial buyer, specifically, because if you build your business to be attractive to a financial buyer, strategic buyers, PE firms can come by and still buy it. But anyway, having a solid culture like that is really attractive, and that can get you a kick up in multiple if you have the right people, the right culture, really doing something cool.
I'd like to thank our guest Steve again for joining us for Napkin Numbers. Appreciate everybody listening and tuning in. Hope you found this valuable and useful. And as always, hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.